Hey, friends, my name is Cal Ellerby. I am the disciple making catalyst for NEWChurch, the church planting initiative of the Apostolic Church of Pentecost. Welcome to our podcast. We are going to, over the next few weeks, explore the stories of a number of people who have been walking together with us in the Living Like a Missionary Challenge. We look forward to all of the different insights and thoughts that the different individuals are going to share with us. So welcome. Let's get right to it. So welcome, everyone. I am really pleased to have Jenn on with me today, and we're going to talk about living like a missionary. So Jenn, welcome. So
No.
let's start by finding out who Jenn is. Just tell me a little bit about your life, and just so people know who we're talking to.
Sure. Yeah. I live in Northern Ontario in Canada and in a little place called South Porcupine, which is part of Timmins. And I live here with my husband and my two girls, and I'm homeschooling them actually. They are 11 and 13.
Nice.
And I supply teach on the side, and I'm heavily involved in my local church, volunteering in the Sunday school. And yeah, things are good. That's basically
Yeah.
it.
Well, so when you say you live in Northern Ontario, I was thinking, because Mary and I are thinking, okay, how are we going to get up and see Jenn and Chris? And I think it's 7 hours north of Toronto. And then I'm looking at the map and I'm thinking, Ken Parker and I drove across the country and we were north of you heading
Yeah,
to, I'm like,
yeah,
that is one very large province.
it
I think it
really
took,
is.
I
Yeah,
think it took
yeah.
us 2 days to get across. But anyways, I was
Wow.
so shocked to see that when I looked on the map, we were actually had gone north of you. We were on our way to Thunder Bay or somewhere. I don't know where we were.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
so
Yep. There's
cool.
definitely a lot of open space up here.
Anyways, welcome and thanks so much for giving me your time. So, Jenn, I'm curious to know sort of a 30,000 foot view of what you felt brought some value to you, or maybe none at all, whatever. If you say none, then that'll be the end of the conversation and we won't talk about it anymore. But working together and walking together through the Living Like a Missionary focus, maybe you can help me to know why you joined in the first place and then share a
Yeah. Okay.
30,000 foot view.
Yeah. So, Chris did find out about the program, my husband, and he he said, "Let's do this together." So it was just a nice way for us to grow together and spend time
Cool.
doing the course. Yeah. So I came to it just having this like really like an excitement about micro churches, but not knowing a lot about what they are, and also having kind of just a sense of the way that I can see the church from my vantage point, the way that it's running right now. Um, it seemed like it needed something. It needs something fresh. So I really was looking for some new perspective. And beyond that, I didn't have a lot of expectations. I was more just excited to learn and grow, and seeing it like a course where I was, like a general course where you're passively learning, right? The thing that was really interesting about this, without getting into the topic like totally yet, just the structure and everything of it that was really neat was that it wasn't. I soon quickly learned within the first couple weeks that it wasn't a typical passive, just write notes and listen and maybe make a couple comments, but it was very interactive, very it was like every aspect of it was thoughtful, to think like how that affects me and what I'm bringing to the idea of micro churches. And that, like, once I kind of got my mind around that, it was really neat because it seemed like, although it was a course and we were learning new things every week, we were also practicing what it was to actually do like a discovery Bible study. And I loved that. Like that was my favorite aspect of doing it. I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but I can
Yeah,
get into
no,
it more if you have.
I appreciate that because um, there, we have been groomed in a lecture idea, right?
Yeah.
Come and some guy, a young guy said to me not too long ago, I'm not interested in going just having some old white guy lecture me every week. I think he was referring to me, but anyways, the truth is that um, probably is a need to reimagine
Hmm.
what is it, not only what does it look like to be equipped, but
Hmm.
who can be equipped.
Yes.
So, and
Yeah.
that's sort of, what you talked about, the fact that it kind of drew you into being a participant.
Hmm.
Um, just talk to me a little bit about that and the value of that, because so many people are intimidated by the idea of ministry, or being
Yeah.
a leader or
Oh,
whatever.
for sure. Yeah.
Just
Yeah. I get that. And I think when we think about anything missional, well, I'll just speak personally, like I just think instantly like, well, I'm not an evangelist. And um, the way that we've typically done outreach is like the leaders will tell you how to go about that, like the people that have the theology degrees, they'll kind of like set the standard or tell us what our mission is, and then we just yes sir, like we follow it along. um and there's obviously some room within that, but it seems like everything's really compartmentalized, in my experience. And I grew up in the church. So, I mean, I've seen many different models, but they all seem to be not as missionally like community based. And so the whole approach of this course is about integrating like who we are into that and taking that kind of fear away from having to be something or have all the answers or know, like just like having this like huge plan of how we're going about it, taking all that away really and just being relational. And it's neat because that's one of the things that I love about the ACOP. We're newly involved with the ACOP as a family, and one of the biggest things that we love about the ACOP is the relational aspect.
mm,
We've been touched by it personally with leadership. So it's neat because I feel like this program is touching on that same model and idea of just um, giving the freedom to, here's some, like, obviously, here's some tools to put in your tool belt to help you, but just be relational, be authentic, um, grow in your relationship with the Lord, and listen to the Holy Spirit, and He'll show you who's in your life that you can reach out to and train to be a disciple of Jesus too.
so cool. I want to get back to that last point that you just made, but did you find that the people that were on the call were normal?
Yeah, we all came really from a lot of different perspectives, um, but we were like all just regular people, just wanting, like having a hunger and thirst to grow and loving. I would say everybody on that call really had a love for people.
It's quite an interesting and somewhat eclectic group because we
Mhm.
go from Timmins, or your little community, London, Ontario, Mississauga, Winnipeg, Grenfell, Saskatchewan. Um, where else am I thinking? There's another little community in Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia. Like we went right from Ontario all
Yeah.
the way to the West Coast. We're
Wow.
really determined to go from Quebec to the Atlantic coast. But
Yes.
until that happens, it's been really quite interesting because we've had so many different, as you said, backgrounds that have come in with not only different perspectives, but a level of different levels of maturity, different levels of understanding, and different levels of fear.
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
some people that have struggled with that as well.
Yeah.
Did you find the layout of the program to be comfortable and workable structure wise?
Yeah, I did. I did. It's great that we could go through it in our own time, and just like read through things, read through scriptures, watch a couple of videos, and then meet together and talk about it more. So it took kind of the pressure off. When we met, we spent a lot of time talking, and that was really great too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I share this in each video that I've done because I think it's important. The whole objective is to equip us to think like missionally minded believers,
Mhm.
to recognize that God has strategically placed us in the context that we're in for the express purpose of touching the life of somebody who he's already working on. This is such
Yeah.
a brilliant part of partnering with God and seeing the gospel change the world. It's an incredible thing. Um, I guess maybe one of the questions that I've asked everybody is that did you feel like a player or a spectator? Did you feel like you were received and your thoughts were received?
Definitely. I definitely did. At first, it was more that I had to get my mind around the structure of it not being just like a regular course, like I said before. Once I did, then yeah, it was just great. It just took off. And it seemed like everybody had a voice, including myself. And yeah, it was really comfortable and
Yeah.
really good.
So the five areas that the material covers is um, intentional, extraordinary prayer and fasting, where we identify people that we're going to pray for specifically. Um, Principles about living like a missionary. What does that mean? What does that look like? How do we do that? The third thing is that planting the gospel, learning to have gospel conversations, and using the Discover Bible Study approach to engaging in people in their pursuit of understanding who Jesus is. And then the fourth and fifth are that we didn't spend much time on, but was um, the emergence of a faith community or a spiritual family, a microchurch, whatever people want to refer to it as. And then the fifth one we didn't spend much time at all on, which was the multiplication piece of going beyond just ourselves. Now, who are we going to invest in and what are we going to do? So, out of those five things and all the different material that we covered, can you sort of highlight one or two things that really you felt were helpful for you?
Yeah, I would say that I'm not sure if this falls into planting the gospel, but um, just like the go make disciples and baptize them, that model of just acts, living out the gospel, not complicating it, that it's something that we can all do, including myself. Like I said before, that it's not left to the leaders, it's everyone who's following Jesus. And that there's freedom in that to live differently, live with intention when we encounter people. That one was fabulous for me. And then the other one was the whole Discovery um, Bible study model. And I liked that one because we did practice it quite a lot when we got together. So it was really, really great to see that in action and to actually like have time to go through it, get our mind around it. And it's a simple approach. I just love that approach to studying the Word of God, reading about it, talking about it as a group, asking the questions.
Yeah.
Um, what stands out to you? Where do you see God and Jesus? What does it make you think of for yourself and for others? I love that model.
So, can you see yourself exercising that with anybody that you're walking with or praying for or believing with?
Yeah, I can. We're actually doing a bit of a small group, Chris and I, right now. That was something in the works for a long time. So we're we're going through scriptures and talking about them and about discipleship and trying to integrate some of that. It's a set curriculum, so it's got its kind of own parameters, but we're trying to put into practice some of the things that we talked about in our study. So yeah.
So just by way of information, I'm not sure if I've shared it with you guys but if anybody's listening, there are 3 really good apps that are free. One is called Waha. One is called M as in Matthew 28, and one is called Discovery. And they're free apps that all do the same thing. They just have a little different twist on the scriptures they use and the different levels of training that are on them.
Mm-hmm.
But just such excellent tools and resources that anybody, believer or non-believer, anybody who has a phone can download onto their phone. And the idea of having those kinds of questions around the scriptures, sitting in a coffee shop or, wherever it is, in your kitchen table, wherever it is, are just so accessible and really incredibly helpful. I wanted to ask you about the Bless 5 thing and the identifying individuals that you would pray specifically for. Did you find that to be meaningful, or did you find it to be a little too specific?
Yeah, I had a bit of a hard time with it. I don't know if I was overcomplicating it, to be honest, and trying to think of people in too many different like areas, and then it did seem a bit overwhelming, but I like the idea of it. And there was definitely like a couple people that I honed in on, but I don't know. I think for me, five was a lot, and maybe it was just the way I was doing it. I don't know. I'm still sort of processing that to see what the best way is, but I feel like I want to be intentional with a couple people, and when it gets a little bit more, it gets a little bit hard to not feel like I've got divided focus. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. No, and we had that discussion, I think, in one of our sessions. Was, is 5 too many, or
Yeah.
there's nothing magical about 5.
Okay. It is the number of grace, but
well, it is, but there, you know what? Jesus didn't say if you don't have 5, it was. But I do think that the idea of listening, which was such a significant part of the whole thing, rather than just praying in generalities, how do we listen to the Holy Spirit? What is God saying about somebody? So Kyle, again, I can't remember who's in which group, but Kyle tells a story about going to the grocery store.
yes, that was in our group. Yeah.
Yeah, and changing lanes simply because he wanted to go through the same lane that the worker that he's been talking to was, make sure that she was in that particular lane. He told me it was several weeks before he realized he didn't know her proper name, which was quite funny. He said, now I know what her real name is. But I guess I'm curious to know what you thought about the whole prayer and fasting, intentional listening. Did you find that to be probably sort of congruent with how you live your own journey already?
Yeah, I did. There's definitely a wealth of even more information My mom always used to do prayer walks with friends. That's something that I do. So that was really nice to learn more about, even on top of what I already do. And I do, yeah, that those are some rhythms of my life that I follow in my community. And it's interesting because we aren't originally from where we are now, but when we moved up here, it'll be 14 years ago now, to the area, like in general. It was, we are in a different house now, but it was in the same area. And I can remember the Lord saying to me, I don't want you to just like endure this, but actually like live here, be intentional.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I try to do, and I do it here too, is like be involved in the community, do things like join the local choir and that kind of stuff. So I like to sing, and so then I'm rubbing shoulders with people and just, spending time getting to know people. And as a mom with kids and doing homeschooling, that's another easy way to just meet other moms, talk to them, and yeah, go from there. So
So
intentionality.
in that, here's a word of encouragement. In that, in those circles, God is already talking to somebody.
Mhm.
The question in our pursuit of prayer is, God, who are you talking to? Who's the person of peace in this circle?
Mhm.
It's one of the things that we talk about in the learning to live like a missionary and planting the gospel is, who's the person of peace in the circle that I'm engaging in? And that I find with many people and with myself is such a liberating thing, is that, I don't have
Mhm.
to create something. It's
Mhm.
learning to listen to what God is doing
Mhm.
and partnering with that.
Yeah.
One of the texts that we had gone through, as you would remember, is Acts chapter 10, where Peter was up on the roof praying, and Cornelius was down in his house praying.
Mhm.
And God's like, okay, Cornelius, you over there, send somebody over there and get this guy who's praying on the roof. I love the picture
Mhm.
of God orchestrating this whole thing.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, Peter was arguing with God. It says that he argued 3 times. He's like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Until somebody showed up on his sidewalk and yelled in the house and said, is there a guy named Peter here? You know,
Yeah.
that that whole idea of partnering with what God is already doing.
Yes. I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, very
Mhm.
cool. So I don't want to keep you a long time. I really appreciate you sharing your heart. Did you find the principles to be practical and applicable
I did. I
overall?
did so much so. Yeah, it's like there's levels, right? Because I want to further study more. I think mainly because just growing up in the church my whole life, it really is a change of mindset. But as far as just living out what's being modeled, it's not something that I have to like spend forever figuring out in order to start doing. And that's pretty
So
amazing.
that's sort of my last series of questions, because the idea of mobilizing, well, let me say this. The stats, the census stats and cultural shift stats are clear that the church as we understand it is not keeping pace with growth, cultural change, and all of those things.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think it's incumbent upon us as believers to stop and say, if this isn't keeping up, is there something else that
Yeah.
we could or should be looking at or thinking about? And I'm not critical of the local church, but I think we have to be fair and we have to be honest with ourselves and say, maybe we need to reimagine some things. You just said the shift, you used the word the shift in mindset. I'm curious to know what that change may have been for you in a couple of areas. One is your perception of the local church's role, and two, what you learned about yourself and what you may have had shift in your own thinking.
Well, I think that part of the change in mindset honestly comes from that sort of like bring people to church, and then someone else will do the work that needs to be done in order to bring them to salvation.
Interesting.
Almost like we're only sort of as lay people only so equipped to do that, and we don't read that in scripture. We don't read that in Acts. That's not how everything started. That's not how it grew to what it is today. And so, I mean, it's just this sense of freedom and understanding that God has given me the ability to use my gifts and talents, and who I am. My identity is who I am, not to try to be somebody else, not to try to be an evangelist if I'm not, but just to be that person who doesn't let their light hide under a bushel, who shines their light brightly so that people can see, and who is in relationship with the Holy Spirit so that I can hear him speaking, so I can speak into someone's life truth, and create an environment where they want to know who Jesus is because I've stepped into their life, as opposed to trying to pull them out of their life into a structured setting. And I'm not trying to be critical of the church, because I do think that there's a place for church programs and things like that. But I just, like you said, I don't think that we're seeing growth happen. So something has to be done differently. And it's really actually hopeful to know that we all have a place, including me, in being part of drawing people to the Lord. And I have this sense that when we, like you say, partner with him and find these people, these persons of peace, and these people that are where something's already happening, where God's already at work, we're just stepping into what, like you said, what he's already doing is so freeing. It's just, and it's exciting, and it means we all play a part in that. That's, I mean, we're not excluded. We're not, we don't have to somehow like get enough schooling or enough confidence. But there's something about it that is really confidence building in and of itself, is just that feeling of like, I do have something to say and something to offer and to speak life and truth to people that need it. And I don't know about you, but it just feels like we're at a place right now where it's the perfect ground for this to happen, because we can feel like that shift where people are hungry. They really are. There's this, like, I feel like there's this harvest happening spiritually. People are hungry to know more about God. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of people that are going through things, and they don't want to do it alone anymore. And so it's good timing. It really is.
You know, when you look at Jesus in Matthew chapter 9, it says that he went from village to village. And I always ask people the question, why was there a crowd following Jesus? Why was there a crowd always showing up? And the simple answer is this, is that he brought hope and answers. Hope that they might be able to be healed. Hope that they might, have something powerful happen for them. Not a revival type of thing. I mean, a practical, real challenges in life. He brought hope and he brought answers. So when he talked to them about even the Beatitudes or any of the sort of instructional kind of sermon things that he did, there was answers. I think the challenge for the church is that people do not believe that it is necessarily a place of hope and answers. Either they've been poorly, reading what God is doing, or they've been, misled in some way, they've been hurt in some way, whatever it is, there's skepticism about that building and about that. It's the craziest thing, because we want people to leave their culture and their world and come and be comfortable in ours. But we typically don't want to leave ours and be comfortable in theirs.
Yeah.
And yet, if we will, I agree with you. There's a hunger, there's a need for hope, there's a need for answers. And Jesus is the answer. The gospel is the answer. But if we don't leave our environment to go and be a part of others' world, it'll be nations in trouble.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
So the last question is the simple rhetorical kind of a thing. Do you think it would be a good thing for other people to get this kind of input into their life?
Absolutely. It's so empowering. It's just really, it changes the way that we see ourselves as followers of Jesus. And I just think it quickens us and stirs up a excitement to see God move and do what he wants to do. And it's fueling more of a sense of love in my heart for the lost too, as I know that I can relate to people and talk to them and help them in their journey to coming to Christ. So yeah, I think that it's definitely useful for everybody.
Yeah. Jen, you were a delight to have a part of your smile and your joy is infectious. And you let me tease you one night, which was kind of fun. You're never sure who can receive that and who can't, but you just were a real delight to be a part of our cohorts. And you know what? Maybe we can entice you to come and walk with us again through either this again or next level coaching kind of stuff, because I believe that the call of God is clearly on you, and your joy is infectious, and it is indications of the presence of Jesus in your life. So thanks for being a part of it, and thanks for taking the time to do this. I know you guys are busy and you got kids, and so it was a sacrifice of your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Oh, you're welcome.
Appreciate it so much.
Blessings.
Just as an invitation, if you're interested in participating in the next cohort of Living Like a Missionary, please contact me at cal@acop.ca. We'll give you the information as to when the new ones are going to be coming on board, and we'd love to see you equipped to be the vessel and vehicle that God has chosen to use within the context that he has placed you to change the lives of those who God is already touching. Blessings on you.